the hill climb since 2012 when it was turned completely from half dirt, half pavement to all pavement. Podiumed 6 times, has been a HPDE PCA lead. He's been a lead driving instructor for PCA. He is also on the national committee for HPDE for Porsche National. And he still drives today with SCCA and sometimes with Porsche too. David Donner, our second speaker, got racing blood in his body. His grandfather restarted the hill climb after it was stopped for World War II. His dad and his older brother have all raced and podiumed on the hill. One. Oh, sorry, not just podiumed, one. And up until 2020 was the only American king of the hill from 2005. So pretty awesome. I'm in awe. And then finally, Mike Collins, who without him, we would not be here. Mike raced before the internet was the internet. So researching his history was difficult. But I did find a statistic from the race year from 1958 to 1960. His podium finish percentage was 87%. All right. Racing in cars that weighed less than 2,000 pounds and now go for probably 2 million. So you're not here to hear me talk, you're here to hear them. Just a couple of housekeeping. If you did not check in with Jackie when you arrived, please check in so we don't charge you $10. Everything is kind of shut down from a food and beverage standpoint until the presentation is over. In addition, please, during the presentation, ask questions. We want this to be interactive. The slides are amazing, the speakers are amazing, so I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
There he is. I think I'm ahead of the speaker. Hey, it's okay now. It just needed John to come up here and threaten it, and it's okay. All right. Well, first off, thanks for joining us. David, Mike, and I have been scheming and wanting to do something like this for a few years now, and it's a real thrill to be able to do it. 5 years. Well, it's been 15 years since last time you did
2020 didn't help. But
I did a previous one in Denver about 15, 18 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. Not sure what's going on with the...
Is that impacting this?
Yep. Yeah, we need to keep the mics up close, but still shouldn't be doing that. But anyway, so, okay, all right. We'll just pretend like it's all good. This is totally unscripted. You'll be able to tell. But that's intentional. So what we've done is assembled a whole bunch of photos from the Collins and Donner collections of the history of racing in Colorado. And, a lot of us kind of take things for granted here, right? That we've got several great tracks to run at, and we don't really think back to kind of where all this came from and how long some of these tracks have been here, and so many great tracks that have come and gone. And so it's going to be a mix of tracks that you're maybe familiar with, some you might not be familiar with, some that have sadly disappeared, so we're going to split this into, and this is just random. We're going to start talking about tracks. We're then going to go on to cars, and some of the cars that Mike and your dad raced against here are legendary. You would not believe the cars that have raced here in Colorado, and then the people, the drivers who have raced here, the people who, again, your dad and Mike got to race against were legends who you wouldn't have thought had racing history in Colorado. So with that, let's just dive in. And
okay, David, would you like to start, sir? No, you're the oldest. Okay. Well, we have been wanting to do this for a number of years. These A lot of the first time I raced it was in about 1958 with a Porsche GT Carrera, and it was a car I picked up in Germany and then drove it through Switzerland into Italy, finally shipped it back to New York, across the country, and I was not driving aggressively, but normally. And in Rexford, Kansas, the engine blew sky high, and I called my brother. He came with our trailer and brought it to David's father, Bob Donner, who was very good at putting engines like this together. He had learned from an aircraft mechanic. I think this is correct, because the concept of the Carrera engine and overhead cams horizontally opposed was very similar to a lot of the aircraft that were flying around. So these guys, there was a lot of experience in that. We got great support from Porsche. This was an unusual time with Porsche because they were trying to make the mark better known worldwide. They actually had a lot of hill climbs going throughout Europe way before Bob and I first ran Pikes Peak in 1960. And as I said, Porsche was very supportive of this and had told us, they sent up a wonderful guy by the name of Nick Matlinger, who helped us out a lot with some of the engine stuff. The engine work actually on the first engine I had was all done by David's father, because it was impossible to work with Hoffman motors, and they were the only ones capable of doing it. Max Hoffman, who is written about in this new book on Porsche, which every one of you should have. It's an amazing piece of writing. It's just published not long ago, and it's called, I think, 356 History, and it is the history of Porsche 356, but it's far more than that. It goes into some of the new Porsches. It talks briefly about Porsche's relationship and what he had to do with Hitler in the late 30s. This is before World War II, and what sort of led up to some of the relationships and the reason that Porsche could not build any really large equipment for a number of years after World War II. They were limited as to what they could actually build. Are you hearing me all right? Okay, good. Okay. If you don't, just scream. But so anyway, there were about 5 or 6 dealerships in the country, and there was, of course, Max was in New York, and then Carl Haas in Chicago, Johnny von Neumann in Los Angeles, yeah, and Art Bunker in the center, and let's see, I think that was about it. And they were very interested. So the old cliche, life is timing and timing is life, we just happened to arrive at a period when Porsche was really eager to try and push the mark in a good way. So they would usually promise a spare engine, and he said, we will give you a spare engine if you blow the one, especially on Pikes Peak. However, you have to return the engine. But anyway, I'd like to turn this over to David to kind of pick up on some of the things that
Well, why don't we dive into some of the tracks?
Okay.
Past and present. And so we've been teasing you, and hopefully you can see this okay up on the screen here, and we'll kind of go a little bit rapid fire through some of these maps. But this one is showing the 1959 Aurora Grand Prix. One lap was 4 miles around there, Mike.
That's right.
So where was this?
You'd almost go to sleep on the main straight. It was so long. But, and the Air Force was not happy about that because the Aurora Grand Prix happened at Buckley Airfield. So I think that was Navy, or was that Air Force? I can't remember. One of you people help me. We got to have some old poops here tonight.
I think it's Air Force.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. So let's just kind of go through. So this is the, and a lot of these came from your archives, Mike. This was one of the programs that he had there. So, yeah. Isn't that great for a cover? Continental Divide Raceways. So I know a lot of you know about this, but I'll bet there's a lot of people here who would say, what? Continental Divide Raceways? There was a track in Castle Rock?
That's right. Yeah, it was owned and run by Sid Langsam and Ray Laveley, I believe, were the names. And it was a really successful track, pulled from all enthusiasts in the Front Range. And so very active, and everybody, got along. There's one thing about cars, most everybody gets along, except when there's money involved. And then things change somewhat. But as I said, we had wonderful support from the Porsche factory, and I had terrific support from David's father. I wouldn't have accomplished nearly what I did without Bob. He could put these engines together, and they were very good. So when you're in the middle of the country and the strength of Porsche is on the outside, you become very appreciative of response, especially from Hoffman Motors, who we were directed most of the time to use.
So, again, this is just some miscellaneous stuff, and it's going to be hard to see on here, but perhaps on the recording it's going to be easier. David or Mike, you see anything interesting on this page? And I can just keep going through here. This is just some of the stuff out of the program.
I think the lower left is Danny Collins. I'm pretty sure.
Bob Donner in the upper left, and
many of you probably remember Danny. I learned to drive with Danny, and he was a great instructor, great mentor, and he was he was a difficult racer. He was a fun guy.
Check out the car in the middle here.
This is a
Testarossa.
David.
Yeah, 250 Testarossa.
Yeah, 360 pontoon Testarossa Ferrari that both David's father and I ran against. It was owned by Charlie Hughes and driven very successfully by Danny Collins. David's father felt because of its performance, it had a special cam that some of the other pontoon Testarossas did not have. One of these cars just sold at auction for $35 million.
And they were racing these things.
That's right.
Of course, then they were just race cars, right?
That's right. Yeah, the cars, the value of the cars today is really kind of silly. Even the Porsche that David's father drove and that I drove, I don't know what they are today, but they're probably at least 3 to 4 million, something like that.
I have no idea what just happened. Oh, there it is. Okay. Again, really hard to read, but this had some facts about CDR. So one lap was 2.8 miles. I didn't realize it covered 280 acres. That was a large piece of property out there, and the straightaway 3,100 feet long. That's
right.
A decent straightaway. So
there were some good races there in the early history of CDR, and I'm sure some of you in the audience tonight probably were there either as participants or watching one of the races. When it was shut down when they shut it down, Del Webb was supposed to buy the property and go into a development, but that never happened.
Yeah.
They removed all of the concrete seating that many of us remember seeing as you drive by the racetrack on the west side of the interstate, and that was all gone, and then they removed the race course itself. Very sad that nothing happened there.
So this is from the 59 race there from the program. So you might recognize some names here from the Indy 500, right? You got Eddie Sachs here, Lloyd Ruby, Roger Ward. I think they were all Indy 500 guys, right?
Yeah, Roger Ward was one of the few round drivers that would step out. Bobby Unser was another one, and Roger was very interesting. He actually had a car that was outdated, and he knew it, and he had 5 guys working on his car. He was sponsored by Leader Card, as some of you may remember, and I went up and I just said, "Mr. Ward," he said, "Oh, you can call me Roger." He said, "Mike," he said, I want to know what your problem is." And I said, "Well, I don't have any problems." And Ward said, "Then why are you so damn slow?" and Roger was just trying to pull me in to hit that current, because even though you don't fly off the course, it's easy, at that point, it was easy to get stuck in sand, and that was the end of the event for you.
There's a name at the top you might recognize. Again, these are the people who were racing here in 1959. Ack Miller, Pikes Peak Hill Climb, legend.
Multiple time winner.
Yeah. The second guy from the top here you might recognize. Good-looking guy, Mike Collins.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Wondering who that good-looking man is right there.
Yeah, that was
Mike Collins.
That was taken 5 years ago.
It does, you can't read it here, but I'm just going to read this because I think it's awesome. The 23-year-old Colorado Springs gentleman looms as the best prospect in the state for international racing fame. He's very talented for his young age, blah, blah, blah. So it's very complimentary. And then, of course, you got your dad below there, David.
Right, Bob Donner. All Colorado sports car fans know about Robert Donner, the old pro of the Rocky Mountain amateur sports car racing, on and on and on. I know CDR was one of his favorite tracks besides Road America, and he talked of it often. I was lucky to be able to race there. We both raced there, I think, for the last event in the 80s, which meant a lot, just to sort of understand that course. It really was a spectacular road course.
Did you know it was the last event?
No, not at the time. No,
Okay.
it was just a SCCA deal.
Yeah. Another person you might recognize, Jim Hall, at the bottom there. I guess would this have been pre-Chaparral days then?
Yeah. And Jim actually, my first contact personally with Jim was at a race in San Marcos, Texas. I was down for, and he and a lot of his crazy friends, and I mean, Jim Hall had some really nutcase friends. These guys had very fast cars, and they all were going to win the race in the first corner, and you know how that goes. And at any rate,
Just a bit of trivia. Jim Hall's son, Jim Hall, I believe it's junior, raced Pikes Peak this year, but didn't make it to the top because it's a mean course sometimes.
Yes.
But interesting to see the few other generations participating in racing in Colorado.
Yeah. So this is it. So we've been talking about where it is. I'm disappointed this has come out so small here. But I just a few days ago did a Google Map kind of download of the area where CDR was. And if you look closely here, you can actually see the outline of the track. And I've highlighted it here.
Good word.
So you can see how close that is to I-25. This is just south of Castle Rock. And so, whoops, I'll go back. So now you can, I don't know if you can see the outline there. I think that is really cool. The track's been gone for 40 years. Yeah. You can still see the outline of it from space. So I thought that was kind of cool to do.
Yeah, this particular shot is taken at the Corkscrew at Laguna Seca, California.
And Mike's the one on the good line.
Yeah.
In the middle car.
If you look carefully at all the stewards, they're all following us through the corner to make sure we're not pulling all 4 tires off for a shortcut, because this was sort of a build-up to the final corner before the straightaway. But the lead SL, I was not really racing them technically, except I wanted to beat them because they were in a larger class. And Dean Mears, who in no relation to the Rick Mears, but Dean Mears was very good at filling the entire road for the whole race. And I was able to get by the other SL, and these guys would just blow away from me on the main chute and then up the hill before the dive into the Corkscrew. So they had lots of horsepower, and but the little Porsche could outbrake them. And I know I had talked with a really well-known driver. He's very good. His name is Don Dickey, and this name would mean nothing to you, but he was so good that he drove other people's car. He didn't drive his own. He would drive other owners' cars. And he told me, he said, about the only corner, Mike, you can pass this, try to get by these guys is on the last corner. And you just have to build up your speed and go inside them and hope like hell they don't think they can cut across you. Because if they do, you're both out. Yeah. And that worked with the guy behind me, but I could never get that close at that point to Dean Mears. But he was driving for some big Mercedes dealership out of Denver, I think. So anyway, great fun with a little Porsche. Yeah. This is La Junta.
Yeah, so La Junta.
That is a pit in 1958. Those were our pits. And I don't know, is that the one with my mother in it?
No. I don't think so.
No, it isn't.
We got a bunch of La Junta photos here. And this to me is so cool.
I think that's me from this angle. It's hard. But this is on the main chute in La Junta before they changed things. La Junta was, as most of you probably know, was a World War II Air Force base. And I think, did they fly 26s out of there? Is that right?
Might have been, yeah, that sounds right to me.
26s, yeah. And I know that Mr. Donner Sr., this is David's grandfather, landed there once on an emergency with his plane, and all these guys came rushing up and told him, this is a secret base. This is all highly secured. What in the hell are you doing there? And by the time Mr. Donner finished talking with these guys, they were apologizing and said, what can we do to serve you, sir? He said, I just need some goddamn gasoline. And with that,
I think it was a Lockheed Electra, which is the same airplane that Amelia Earhart was lost in, but it was a pretty high-performance aircraft in that day.
Apparently, it consumed a lot of fuel.
Yeah.
In fact, the old Donner Airport that used to exist.
Well, the Pine Valley Airport was owned by my grandfather in the 50s, and where they actually retrofitted World War II aircraft, turn them into commercial planes. But that was that's where Dad learned about Porsche engines, was working with the aircraft mechanics that worked there. So.
And was that basically where the Air Force Academy is?
Yeah, that's where the airport is now.
Yeah.
Same airfield.
Yeah. So I dug up most of this is from Mike, but some of it was internet research. But little known La Junta facts, and I think this is amazing for those who have been to La Junta. I mean, first of all, you don't have buildings like this there anymore. There's one hangar left, but that's it. But the initial airport circuit, and I was amazed Mr. Pettiford didn't even know this, was 2.7 miles long, so double the current length. And that was from 1955 until the early 60s. The first race there was November 13th, 1955. So we need to tell them down there, they're coming up to their 70th anniversary next year. So we need to have a big shindig, I think. They had nearly 1,000 spectators, 18 drivers. It was one in a Ferrari with an average speed of 90 miles an hour. Some things don't change because that's probably about the average speed around there now. 1956, they had 38 cars and 3,400 spectators. This is La Junta. 57, 60 cars and nearly 5,000 spectators. 58 had 78 cars. 1959, they had 6,000 spectators, getting bigger and bigger every year. In 1960, they had 119 cars from 10 states. And I mean, you raced in pretty much all of these, right? This yellow poster that I lucked into at a swap meet last year is an original poster from the 1958 La Junta race. Memorial Day, it says here, Memorial Day of 1961 was the last race of that early era of La Junta Raceway, and they had 128 cars entered. Why didn't it stay 2.7 miles? Wouldn't that be awesome if it was today? But why it didn't is that the pilots who like to use the airport, so when it was 2.7 miles, it used a lot of what is the airport right now. And they were upset that they would lose some taxiways and probably a runway at the time for a weekend. So they protested it. It was shut down for a period of time, and then Danny Collins, who Mike was talking about, redesigned it as a 1.7 mile circuit. So still a little bit longer than it is today. And I've actually got a map on here to show you what it was like. So it's just a little bit longer, not hugely. Thank you. So it reopened in 1974. So there was a big pause there with the 1.7 mile circuit. Only 25 cars competed that year. But then in 1975 grew to 135 cars across 22 divisions. So again, and this is a national race. And then I don't know when. Robin said make up a year, so I'm going to say in 1984, the track was reduced to its current length of 1.3 miles. So there's your brief history of La Junta, and we got some other really cool photos here. Thanks to Mike primarily for a lot of these. So let's kind of go through here. So Mike, I know when David and I saw this, we're like, what are those things in the background? And they're like trailers, right?
Yeah. This is a typical pit at La Junta. You can see Bob Donner's RSK on the left and my little Carrera on the right. If you look really carefully in the lower right-hand corner of the equipment, you'll see some aluminum tubes. That is a quick jack for the RSK, the RS, both 550. All those cars could be lifted with that quick jack and it would lift the whole rear end. And of course, you keep in mind the RSK weighed about 1,000 pounds. Now, how much the RS60s and 61s, which are really a superior car with a longer wheelbase, how much more they weighed, I'm not quite sure. But it wasn't very much, and you had a pretty good power to weight ratio. And but that jack they were required to carry for a while, along with a spare tire, because it was part of the FIA requirements, which were an enormous pain, but everybody had to follow that, or you either were disqualified after the race or during the race. I tested it once, putting on a really cool-looking helmet in New Mexico. I was racing at Fort Sumner. That's Fort Sumner, not Fort Sumter, but Fort Sumner, New Mexico. And this thing was just beautiful, but I had found it at a garage sale, and it was actually a riding helmet. And so I put it on, and I lasted one lap before everybody black flagged me, and they said, if you put that on again, you're out of here. We can't have that kind of, you have to obey the rules, which we did. We went right back, but it was fun for one lap to look very sophisticated. This picture, I believe, is taken in Casper. And David, do you want to?
No, I think that's my dad and the 550 in front, and then there's a couple other.
Is he saying goodbye to his competitors?
Yeah, I think that was the 550. I notice it doesn't have a headrest behind, so that'd be the 550, which later was painted black and white, the skunk.
You'll see pictures of this later. Yeah. So I'll just kind of go through a bunch of photos here.
So this is interesting. That trailer you see, we still have it. It carries branches to the dump, but it is still there. So that I wish there was that car sitting on it too.
Yeah, for sure.
It's my dad, Bob Donner.
Yeah.
Now this picture was taken at Midland, Texas. That's Bob changing the left wheel and the little Carrera. Look carefully at the Carrera and notice the factory roll bar, which was a really well done roll bar. It was beautifully done, which I immediately removed and replaced with a little hoop roll bar that was about at the base of my neck. But I never told my mother that when I would go out in the cars. This is Don Sessler, I think, isn't it? And that's Elkhart Lake.
Elkhart Lake.
Elkhart Lake in that particular photo. Yeah, that's La Junta.
Yeah.
That's Aurora Grand Prix with Dabney Collins throwing the checkered flag.
There's a lot of Collins.
Yeah. No relation. This
There you go.
David's father and I took turns with his 550 Porsche and the Carrera. You'll notice with the Carrera, and this might be a good time to spend just 30 seconds telling you the difference with this car versus a standard Speedster. And it was significant because first of all, the center part of the wheels was steel, as it was Porsche, so it looked the same. But the rims were, instead of being welded, were riveted, and they were aluminum and weighed 1/4 as much. So Porsche was reducing the unsprung rate, plus providing a more selection potential to tires that you could run. Because what we do in running a tires, you have 3 tires, you'd have one tire that is literally almost brand new, and that's the one you took through inspection. Then you had another that was about 3/4 bald, and one more that was darn near bald. And you put on the one that was 3/4 bald because by the middle of the race it became a slick. And the grip was so much better that it was probably, a second or so a lap. But this is David's.
This is a hill climb. I assume?
This is a hill climb near Castle Rock, just south of Castle Rock. Yeah. And that's David's father's 550. And this is an interesting car. My dad had some connections with Chrysler, and he had a car in the Mexican road race with a single 4-barrel carburetor. That was a real Hemi, actual Hemi, and it 105 miles an hour is what they did in the Mexican road race, and that was not enough because the Lincolns, or the stinky Linkies as we call them, all had more horsepower and lighter weight. They also had Jack McGrath driving them and some other world-class drivers. But this Chrysler here that you're looking at was illegal and couldn't be run because of the two carburetors. So Dad took it with me. We went to the Bonneville Sawplatz, and you can see that this thing is square, very square car, and the front end, was about as big as a 15-foot long bar, and you're pushing a lot of air, and that car did an honest, with a slight tailwind, did an honest 141 miles an hour. Now try that. This is 1954, 55. Then, without a wind assist, it did 121, which is what they wanted to use, which in the Mexican road race, which would have absolutely kicked the stinky Linkies out of the way. But Ford had spent a lot of time in their effort with tire places, changing places along the 1,000 miles that, you begin not far from Mexico City, and then you finish in Juarez. And so they had spent a lot, and when they first took the other Chrysler down, Ford demanded that they had to retain the muffler system that was on it. And here was a Lincoln with beautifully formed headers and all of this trick work done. So there were great arguments, and finally Ford Motor Company took the pill and allowed some of these other cars to do a few more modifications to it on them. But some of the cars that Pikes Peak, and that's Bob.
Yeah.
He's in the...
It's a fabulous photo.
That's a RS-61.
Yeah. David, you might want to explain the induction.
From what I learned, it's hard to see on the slide, but the whole back of the car is taped up because there was basically a high pressure area where air would come over, and that's where the car got its air. But of course, on a dirt road, you didn't want gravel going into that compartment, so they sealed it off. And one of the other changes they had to make were lengthening the velocity stacks to change the torque, down to a lower RPM to be able to get out of the corners. And Porsche, actually, my dad had mentioned that he called them, and this would have been in 60 or 61. And they said, to make these metal things 15 centimeters, blah, blah, blah. But there was no time to do that. So he just put rubber tubing on and extended it up, and it solved the problem. So there were also some vents on the side that were removed to get additional air in there where rocks wouldn't come in. But
you can see the velocity stacks there again, right? Behind him.
But I mean, we're only talking 180 horsepower at sea level, or 200 horse maybe. So
about 180 horsepower they were doing.
Not a lot
at
up
sea
there.
level, and maybe 130 here.
So it's minus
20% loss here.
Yeah.
Or maybe more.
Maybe more, yeah.
Yeah, we've always figured from sea level to the summit is about 40%.
This shot was taken at 14 Mile. Not a great deal of sliding with these, but the Porsche said, for goodness sakes, do not get into starting gear, because starting gear you would push down, and the only time you'd use it is when the car was stationary on the grid. And this was just to move the car in a manner.
And then you'd lock it out once you got going.
Pardon?
Didn't you lock it out?
Yeah.
So
you wouldn't hit it accidentally, right?
No, we didn't lock it out. We didn't.
Yeah.
Because what we did is in a tight corner, you'd push down and you'd almost stop the car, and push down, then to the left and then to the right, and you'd squirt with the car about 10, 15 feet, and then put it in the real low gear, and then go from low to second, third, fourth, fifth, etc.
This is a great photo. This is 1960, I assume?
Yeah, Mike, you
1960.
know, well, Jerry Unser from the left, Bobby Unser, and then the other two, I'm not sure.
Yeah, Louis Unser on the left, who drove a Pontiac,
Louis,
and
yeah.
Louis was as good an Unser as there ever was. He got extremely sick with, I think, some form of a rare cancer, and passed literally a year after this picture was taken. But Bobby Unser did well at Indianapolis and on the ovals, and he was willing to step out, unlike many drivers. Bobby did that, and this is Charlie Bryant, who had he drove a Corvette. David Slaughter, myself. But what they did for these pictures at this point is they didn't have a place for photographs, so they talked to a couple of guys from a sign shop to drive these poles into almost solid granite and pull the winner's circle across so they could do some PR shots.
Is this on the summit?
And no, I got
It's at 16 miles.
It's at 16 Mile. Okay.
yeah. So
All right. I'm just going to zip through because we got so many cool things here. Is that back to La Junta? Looks like it.
yeah, this is La Junta.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and those were one of the thing, and that's
Oh,
that would be Dabney in the 5.7 Mazda before Jim Hall owned it. And
yeah.
who was the guy that had who was it who owned the 5.7 in Denver? It was very well known, and he almost funded one school there.
Temple Buell.
Temple Buell.
Yeah, Temple Buell. Temple
Yeah.
Buell owned it, and Dabney set it up, but they never got the thing going well. Hall did with his mechanics, and the thing was a dart. And I know the one race that I had with Hall, and I was not racing with him because we were in a much different class. He said this thing has its differential is very cranky, and if I get on this thing hard at the start, I'm going to blow the rear end out, and then furthermore, I need about 3 or 4 laps to warm it up, and then it was fine.
So
This is La Junta.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite pictures. On the left is you, Mike. Right.
That's
in
right.
In your Carrera.
Yeah. And
How many wide are they here at the start? 7 is it? Okay. 7 wide at the start, and I like you can see your front tires. You know, there's very little weight on those.
Yeah.
You've got the hammer down, Mike. You're trying to get first into the first corner here, I guess. But I think that's an awesome photo.
Yeah, this is on the back side of La Junta, west side, I guess you would call.
Yep.
And I don't know who that was. Don Berlin, I think, maybe. And somebody in a Maserati and a Corvette, I think, on the right.
So this is the 1.7 mile layout. So for those who are familiar with La Junta, you'll see it looks a little bit different right here. Turn 6 here is like a 90 degree all of a sudden, and so it does a little jog down and around. So I'm guessing, Mike, that where it cuts over now, this probably went up to where this is where like the taxiway is now. That if you really screw up in turn 6, you get close to that taxiway. So that's what it looks like to me, is that it went all the way up to that taxiway, across, and then cut down and a little jog there. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this is funny. Spectator area, which is like in the North 40. I don't know if that's north, but
That's right.
yeah, way out in the middle of nowhere now at La Junta was one of the spectator areas. So I'm just going to zip through it. I'm going to go to. I've got another thing. Oh, that's a great shot. Pikes Peak, I assume.
Yeah, that's
Don't
Mount
recognize-
Buckhorn Hill Climb.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay.
Has anybody here heard of Mount Buckhorn? Good. We got one hand up back there.
Yeah. Yeah. Where's that, Mike?
Yeah.
Where's Mount Buckhorn?
Well, it's not. That's hard. It's near Cheyenne Mountain.
Oh, really?
That's as close as I can get.
Oh, wow.
And yeah.
Wow.
And it was a Buckhorn Hill climb, very short, only about a mile and a half, and then that was all that was available. I don't know how the race, the hill climb, where it happened, was allowed to happen.
Oh, yeah?
Because of the control of the highways. But this was, I think, a county road, and somebody worked something out, and I don't know what it was.
So I think this is the paddock at La Junta, right?
Yes.
And look
Yeah.
at the cars. I mean, it's just absolutely, Ferrari, Maserati.
Yeah, Birdcage.
Birdcage.
Maserati.
Birdcage Maserati, the second one there.
Bocar.
Bocar is the
Bocar,
third
which
one.
stands for Bob Carnes.
Yeah. I mean, they're all, priceless cars today. It's amazing. Okay, I'm going to switch here a little bit into another collection. Where are we on time? Yeah, we don't have a whole lot of time. Do you mind taking that for a second?
How we doing time-wise?
We're tight.
We're tight.
We will make it work.
Shall we droll on, or do you want to eat?
I'll put up. There's another set of. We went through that. Yeah, a few photos here we can go through quickly.
Where was that taken? Yeah, that was.
I haven't seen these before, so I'm not sure.
Well, that's you, Mike, right?
Somebody's been passing out some early family photographs.
I think this is a cool article. This was an article about Mike in 1960, young spring sports car driver called State's Best.
Actually, being serious about this particular helmet that I was wearing and many others, it's what we call an open face helmet, meaning that it's open to your face and your chin. And I remember the year that I ran the hill and everybody else suffered, we were having a hailstorm, but it was worse than hail. It was actually little ice balls that were the size of peas in diameter, and then about 3 to 4 inches of this stuff on. But it hurt so much, even at 50 or 60 miles an hour, which is about the speed we were going then. What David is doing today is frightening. It's so quick. No, that's not true, Joni.
Well, with a windshield, so it's not and defroster.
But anyway, just the worlds have changed. So you hold it up because it was stinging so much. So you're driving the car with one hand and shifting with one hand, and that is not good.
No.
This was a photo of at the Monterey Historics with Phil Hill on the left, my dad, and then Lou Sellier, who was a big Ferrari collector in the day, so to speak. I think it was probably a gathering. I think Phil passed right after that, actually.
And Phil ran the hill climb, right?
Phil ran the hill climb. Actually, my dad told me a story. In the older days, in the 50s or so, 60s, they always had the cars at the Broadmoor Hotel or the Broadmoor Garage, and that's where you went to see everything. And it's where he met Phil Hill, and Phil kind of gave him advice on what to do with racing and where to go and do this and that. And he kind of learned a lot from him, and always would see him at events, and they knew each other through the years, through that whole era, and remained friends till the end. He actually restored a couple cars for my dad and some other neat stuff. Pikes Peak.
Yeah, great shot of your dad and Mike.
Mobil was a big sponsor for a number of years.
Which is actually interesting because this year was the 50th anniversary of Mobil, and they supported quite a few cars at Pikes Peak this year. So they've sort of come back. That's my brother Bobby, I believe 1989. Just threw one in there of him and his history.
There you go, Mike.
That one.
Looking pretty buff there.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm a little thinner than that now. Yeah, this is my mother in a TCMG, my mother with me standing over. My dad had a very minor, when he was flying for Continental then, but he had a very minor position in Import Motors Limited. That was owned mostly by John Booth and I think Arthur Rippey had some interest in it, and they basically sold Jags. And you got to cover this one.
That's my lovely mother who's here tonight with us, joining.
Yes.
Hanging out at the shop.
With an interesting piece of machinery behind it.
Right. And the
You got to tell a story about this. I scanned this from your collection, Mike, and I looked at it later. I'm like, why did I scan this? It's like a business card, but it's got a great story.
Well,
put your mic up. Your mic.
we had a polish and spit show at the Broadmoor World Arena many years ago. And a gentleman by the name of John Bond and his wife Elaine were the judges. And John Bond is a gentleman who started Road and Track and owned Road and Track. So this was the car that he had, and I said, God, I love that car. Can I duplicate it, make a change or two? He said, no. But he said, as soon as I die and Elaine dies, then you can go ahead and duplicate the card. I just gave one of these to, I think, Chris tonight, which is just about the same thing. But Bond was a very unusual guy in that he started that magazine and he had very good writing. And the quality of the writing in Road and Track was absolutely fantastic. So this was just a little funny thing that he allowed me to do to a few friends. This is a shot that I took at the Porsche factory, and you can see 356s. There are about three of them in line, 3 or 4 in line. They were kicking out, I forget how many cars at that time, but it wasn't very many, very few.
What year would this have been?
Pardon?
What year was this?
Yeah.
What year was this when you went to pick up your car there?
I'm sorry, I don't hear you.
59 or?
What,
Yeah.
59?
58.
58,
This would be
okay.
58.
I thought I had some more here.
That's about 58 too. This is the car that I got from Art Bunker. It didn't look like that when I picked it up. It really looked more like a deflated football. But, and Bob Donner found through Larry Dummer a little dude trailer that didn't weigh 100,000 pounds. You know, we needed lightweight trailers to tow a car that weighed 1,000 pounds, maybe.
Yeah.
So this is the little dude that we adapted. He had one and I had one. And the only problem at all with them, sometimes if you got on a highway that had high wear on it, I had one tire blow on me once. And I didn't even know I had a blowout till I looked in the rearview mirror and I saw all the smoke behind me. Well, it was the tire that was on fire. And so we pulled it over and we had a spare and drove it a little slower, but certain concrete surfaces would have impacted. This is a car worth covering. Do you want to talk about that, Chris?
Yeah, it's unique. I think when I first saw this, I'm like, what the heck is that?
Yeah, this is a very special Corvette that GM ran at Sebring. And then they had another one that was a very rough version of this called the Mule, which is the one that they actually did most of the racing with. Beautifully done, beautifully finished car. I think this was I don't know where this is taken. It could be at Elkhart.
If that car still survives, it's got to be millions.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah,
where
this
that
looks
is. But it's a
like
great
Monterey,
show. Yeah, it
doesn't
looks
it?
like Monterey, doesn't it? Yeah. All right. Well, I promised this wasn't scripted. But we've come to the end of our appointed time here.
Yes.
I think I've got some other photos on here, so happy to throw those up while people are eating and that sort of thing. But, we mentioned, fair game for questions. And, if you've got questions, fire them away now or find David or Mike, interrupt their dinner, I guess. Yeah. Feel free to interrupt their dinner if they got questions about anything or any of the photos I might put up. Yeah. What? Yeah, this is a great question. And I think I got a photo of this. What did you wear as a driver for
Well,
safety gear?
Well, for safety, and this to keep in mind was in the 50s, we had to have flame-proof coveralls. So what we'd do is we'd take our coveralls and we'd fill a hot pan of water with salt, and then dip the no, that's true. And dip the driver's suit in, and then hang it out to dry. And it was horrible because when it dried out, and you were moving your arms, it was just like sandpaper. And everywhere you had these off. I looked more like a Native American when I climbed out of that thing, and I was totally red. And
I'll bet.
the shoes, we didn't have special racing shoes then, so we'd go down to bowling alleys, and we would buy a pair of bowling shoes, and then they had to be all black so they really looked cool, and put them on. And
I'm pretty sure I got a photo, so keep speaking, but I think I can find a photo of that.
Probably a riding helmet of some
What?
sort. A riding helmet. What did you use for a helmet? Early.
I used a Bell helmet, but the riding helmet was one I think I bought it at Bingo's, and he had some strange stuff there. Bingo really had an unusual store, and he'd do lots of leather work, but he had this darn helmet, which I loved, and I bought it from him.
You know what?
And wore it for a couple laps. But the Bell helmet, towards the end of when we were racing, Top Tex came out with another helmet, and now the helmet the full face helmet, I can't remember who makes that. Who makes the full face helmet?
Oh well, there's multiple brands now. but-
numerous people.
Yeah, Simpson,
Yeah.
Stilo.
Which is very important that with the strength of the helmet and the ability to tighten it up so it's on your head extremely tight, and in an event it's not moving around and doing odd things.
I know I've got a photo somewhere of you in your get-up. Yeah, but yeah, pretty amazing. First Pierre and then Mike. What was your favorite race and why?
Favorite place to drive or race?
Or favorite race that you competed in?
that I was in.
Yeah, is there like a one that stands out?
What?
Or favorite track?
Favorite track? Boy, that's hard to say. I see either Laguna Seca or Elkhart Lake. One of those two. I never was able to race in the east at Lime Rock or any of those. I wish I could have. I just was unable to. I was working too, and so it just wasn't there. But Laguna Seca, before they put the kink in, now they had to put the kink in because they lost a few drivers. And Sammy Weiss, I know, was taken out there because he looked down at his instruments instead of straight ahead when the turn began, and he went into a series of scrub oaks, and it just took him out. So they changed. They had minor changes in these courses in Laguna Seca, and I think also in Elkhart Lake, but mainly it's in the control of the races. If you do something stupid, you're going to be talked to, and if you do something stupid again, you go home.
Well, that hasn't changed. Mike?
I just wanted to know what were the most competitive cars? Was Porsche the
That's a good question. If the Alpha Gilletta Spider was well driven and had probably a really good engine, possibly a cheater, then it could be competitive. But it was very difficult against, when the Germans put their mind to something, they built a heck of a good product that can be driven and supported by parts situation. Because we used a lot of parts, and I'd have somebody call and said, Mike, who the hell is Hoffman Motors? And I said, well, that's Max Hoffman runs that. And he said, well, I just see an awful lot of orders from you for parts from Hoffman. Well, we did have to use a lot of parts, and things would wear down. But we were fortunate not to lose any engines. Plus, we had an unusual talent in David's father who could put those engines together, and it made a big difference. We did a lot of our own work.
I think depending on the track, the Ferraris did pretty well on most of the fast tracks. And that was sort of my dad's thing. That's why he went to Ferrari after he got out of Porsches, was because they're the only cars that ever beat him, really. So they definitely were strong, and the Road America.
Speaking of that, David, why don't you tell them about your ride in the 512 when you were at the historic races?
Oh.
Yeah, as I recall, it was a very good result.
Actually, it was the year Mr. Ferrari had passed away, and we were running a car that, I don't know, many of you know, that ran against the 917 Porsche, but Ferrari had the 512. This is the 512M, and it was an interesting race because Brian Redman was in it, and a bunch of others from that era, full of 917s, and we ended up winning. It's just the Monterey Storks, but it's still a race. And I think there was a Gulf Mirage that was on my tail the whole event. But it was really a great thing, and we did that quite a bit actually every year. Monterey Storks, which is coming up next month actually. Anyway.
So anyway, I'll see if I can set this up to do like an auto rotation of photos. I mean, some of these are you got photos of when you picked up the car at the Porsche factory in the 50s and stuff. Cool stuff. So I'll see if I can set that up to run. But
that's the control gate at Porsche, and you'll notice that there's I think a 53 Chevrolet at the far right, and a couple of VWs, and then a 356 coupe coming through the gate.
There's another photograph with the same cars, but there's a Ford Thunderbird.
Yes, there is.
And everyone was gathered around that. They're more interested in the Thunderbird than any of the German stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, I want to thank both of you legends for joining me up here. Really appreciate it. I think it's a real treat. So thank you guys, and enjoy your dinner, everybody.
Yeah. Well done, Chris. You're organized.
Thanks. I'm sure there's a way to set up a slideshow here.